If you drive down an unassuming stretch of road in central Ohio, you might miss it at first. A crumbling brick facade, half swallowed by a century of tangled undergrowth. But step a little closer and you'll feel it. A profound chill that has nothing to do with the wind. This is the abandoned St. Augustine Asylum for the Disturbed, a place whose very name has become a whisper among locals, a byword for forgotten suffering and secrets that refuse to stay buried. The asylum's story begins in the late 19th century, a time of grand ambition and grim realities in mental health care. Built in the imposing Kirkbride style, its sprawling wings were designed with a hopeful philosophy that architecture, sunlight, and fresh air could heal troubled minds. At its peak, St. Augustine was a self-contained world, complete with its own farms, workshops, and a quiet cemetery tucked away on the grounds, where those with no one left to claim them found their final, anonymous rest. But the noble vision soon crumbled under the weight of human misery. By the early 20th century, overcrowding was rampant. More than 2,000 souls were packed into spaces designed for half that number. Treatments that were once hailed as revolutionary, ice water hydrotherapy, electroshock sessions, and the devastating precision of the prefrontal lobotomy became instruments of control in an understaffed, overwhelmed institution. Former staff spoke of screams that echoed through the long, dark corridors at night, and of patients who wandered the halls like ghosts long before their time. The asylum, it was said, was haunted even when its wards were full. As the decades passed, public perception of mental health shifted. With the rise of new medications and a push for deinstitutionalization, the great asylums of America began to empty. By the early 1980s, St. Augustine stood silent, its windows boarded, its once bustling halls left to the dust and the spiders. But the stories never ended. They only grew stronger, more sinister, nourished by the darkness and the decay. And it was in this modern era of decay that a new, terrifying chapter of the asylum's story began to unfold, not through local lore or campfire tales, but through the cold, impartial lens of a digital camera. It all started with a team of urban explorers, drawn to the asylum by its formidable reputation. They set up motion-activated cameras throughout the most notorious wards, hoping to capture evidence of the spectral nurses and shadowy figures that legend claimed still walked the halls. For weeks, they found nothing but dust motes dancing in moonlight and the occasional scurrying rodent. But then, on a Tuesday in late October, one of the cameras in the old surgical wing captured something impossible. The footage, time-stamped at 2:13 in the morning, showed a figure gliding into view. It was tall and gaunt, dressed in an archaic surgeon's uniform, complete with a mask and cap from a bygone era. The figure didn't walk, it seemed to float, moving with an unnatural grace through the debris-strewn corridor. At first, the explorers dismissed it as a trick of the light, a digital artifact. But night after night, the cameras recorded the same spectral surgeon. It would appear just after 2 a.m., making its rounds through the operating theaters and the maternity ward, always avoiding direct light, always vanishing before dawn. The legend of the phantom surgeon was born. The footage was analyzed, debated, and dissected by paranormal experts and skeptics alike. The figure's presence often coincided with strange phenomena. Electromagnetic fields would spike violently, and sensitive audio equipment would record a faint, rhythmic sound, like the slicing of a scalpel, followed by a woman's whispered sigh. To understand who or what this entity was, investigators had to dig into the asylum's darkest archives, unearthing a history far more horrific than they could have ever imagined. The name they found, buried in a box of water-damaged personnel files, was Dr. Alistair Blackwood. In the 1930s, Blackwood was a brilliant but deeply disturbed obstetrician, obsessed with the mysteries of life and death. He believed that the moment of childbirth was a fragile gateway between worlds, and he developed a grotesque theory that he could somehow reclaim a soul from the afterlife by performing a ritualistic cesarean section on the recently deceased. Publicly, Dr. Blackwood was a respected physician, but privately, in the asylum's forgotten basement morgue, he conducted unspeakable experiments. His subjects were the most vulnerable of the asylum's population, young nurses who succumbed to the rampant diseases of the era, or those, according to hushed rumors, met with mysterious accidents on the night shift. These women, who had dedicated their lives to caring for others, became the unwilling participants in his macabre theater. The stories of the nurses of St. Augustine are a litany of tragedy. In an era before modern medicine, nursing was a perilous profession. They faced long hours, infectious diseases like tuberculosis and influenza, and the unpredictable dangers of caring for severely ill patients. Hospital records, though incomplete, document at least 3 nurses who vanished without a trace between 1938 and 1952. One of them, a young woman named Eleanor Vance, was last seen heading toward the basement wards at the end of her shift. She was never seen again. Locals whispered that she had uncovered Dr. Blackwood's secret, and for that, she paid the ultimate price. These women weren't just names in a file. They were souls trapped in a cycle of suffering. And according to the terrifying new evidence, their torment did not end with their deaths. The phantom surgeon seen on camera was not just wandering the halls. It was reenacting its life's sinister work. The most chilling piece of footage came from a camera placed in the long-abandoned maternity ward. The phantom of Dr. Blackwood appears, moving toward one of the rusted delivery beds. As he stands over it, a second, more translucent figure slowly materializes on the bed, the apparition of a woman in an old-fashioned nurse's uniform. She is still lifeless. Dr. Blackwood raises his hands, his movements precise and practiced, as he performs his spectral, sinister cesarean. No instruments are visible, yet the motions are unmistakable. The air in the recording grows thick with static, and for a fleeting moment, the faint sound of a baby's cry can be heard before both figures dissolve into the darkness. This was the doctor's ritual. This was his unending obsession. He wasn't just a ghost, he was a predator, eternally bound to his victims, forcing them to relive their violation night after night. The spirits of the nurses were not haunting the asylum by choice. They were his prisoners. Armed with this horrifying context, paranormal investigation teams descended on St. Augustine. Their findings painted an even grimmer picture. In the surgical wing, where Blackwood once reigned, thermal cameras recorded inexplicable cold spots that matched the shape of a human form on the operating tables. EMF meters, designed to detect fluctuations in electromagnetic energy, would scream to life in the presence of no discernible power source. Perhaps most disturbing were the electronic voice phenomena, or EVPs. On highly sensitive audio recorders, investigators captured disembodied whispers amidst the static. They were faint, fragmented, but undeniable. A woman's voice pleading, "Let me rest." Another crying out a single name, Eleanor. And on one occasion, a man's voice, cold and clinical, was recorded near the morgue. It spoke only 3 words. "The subject is ready." Skeptics, of course, offer rational explanations. They point to auditory pareidolia, the tendency of the human brain to find patterns in random noise. They suggest the visual anomalies are merely lens flares or dust particles. They argue that the building's grim history creates an atmosphere of suggestion, priming visitors to experience the supernatural. But how do you explain multiple cameras in different locations, capturing the same spectral figure, performing the same ritualistic act? How do you rationalize the intelligent, responsive voices that answer direct questions in the dead of night? Today, St. Augustine Asylum stands as a monument to its own dark legacy. The unending vigil continues. The phantom of Dr. Alistair Blackwood still walks the corridors, a spectral surgeon forever searching for his next subject. And the ghosts of his nurses remain with him, trapped in a nightmare from which they can never awaken. The peeling paint, the rusted gurneys, and the shattered windows are not just signs of decay. They are the scars of a story that refuses to be forgotten. And for those who dare to listen in the dead of night, the asylum still whispers its terrible secrets, a chilling reminder that some places are not just empty, they are occupied.